You are listening to the Fresh Take Network.
What it is, what it do, welcome to Fresh Take. Joshua, Adam, Martha, as always, with Dick. And we are here with the one and only, the fantastic from Couch Potato Diary, Mr. Peter Klein.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks
It's
for joining us.
pleasure.
Great to see you. We've never met before, but obviously big fan of your work before Couch Potato Diary, and just an opportunity to sit and chat about your career and what you've done and where you're going and where you want it to go, type of thing. So thanks for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it, Peter.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Looking forward to this.
Josh, do you want to start?
Yeah, I guess the basic one that we always kind of start with: what drove you? What age were you when you're like, yeah, I kind of want to do this broadcast thing?
The age, probably around like 10 or 11, like 12 at the max. And the main kind of driver for it was I always knew that I wanted to be involved in sports, and I always knew I was bad at them. So the only way to really kind of get into it was to talk about them. And from I sound very old now saying this, but from an early age, I would always do like the commentary on my video games, whether it was like little Ken Griffey Jr. baseball on the Game Boy, to more advanced games. Now, I was always doing commentary, and I remember sitting in my basement, my parents' basement, and playing MVP Baseball 2004 and doing the line drive, base hit, all that stuff, and then hearing the door upstairs slam because I was being too loud, getting too boisterous about a regular season game between the Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Devil Rays and MVP Baseball 2004. So it's been a passion for a long time, for sure.
That's a classic game, by the way.
That's fantastic. You know what? I wouldn't know. I'm not too busy with dogs and kids and that. But you know what? I think your story is pretty similar to a lot of people, where it's like they do the play-by-play on something that they're playing, or they turn down Bob Cole or whoever it happens to be, Chris Cuthbert, because his voice is too high. No, Chris is great. And kind of do their own thing. And so yeah, it's funny how that when did you start realizing that, holy shit, I could make some money doing this? Like, this could be like a real career rather than just getting the door slammed on me.
Right. Well, the sarcastic answer would be I haven't yet.
But, yeah.
But no, I think one of the early times was like back in college. We would do we did kind of a sports radio show, and there was one night where when I was in first year, because at the time it was A, it was a college, and B, it was just Mount Royal was just a 2-year program, and we had the second year is kind of in charge of things, and they would put everything together, but they just did their first kind of TV news broadcast thing. I don't think it went very well, and they all went out for drinks after, and I was the only first year who was supposed to be on the show that day, and everyone left, and I was sitting there, I was getting ready, I was like, it's 20 minutes, like someone should be here by now. And no one was. And so I just had to do a 2-hour sports show on my own without preparing for a 2-hour sports show on my own. And if I probably looking back on it now, it was probably terrible. But at the time, I thought it was like, I thought I did really, really well. And I thought like, hey, this is actually something I could actually do. And then we were supposed to have a basketball broadcast that night, and it wasn't like there was no one down there. So I had to take the equipment. I said on the mic, all right, we're going to have a 15-minute production from Mike the Mime, and then you'll hear basketball on the broadcast. So I just plotted everything up, ran down, did the basketball broadcast without having prepared for it at all. And again, it probably wasn't super duper, but I didn't swear, so that was lovely. So it was at that point where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be like the best at this, but I know I can at least do all of this. And that was kind of when like, okay, this is something I could actually be pretty good at.
Yeah. Baptism by fire. Hey,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you get an opportunity to just flex your chops like that. All of those little things you did when you were a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid in the basement just start coming back to you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Like you can't put 8 years experience of broadcasting NHL on GameCube on a resume, but it's certainly, I have found that it's certainly in those times just kind of helps out for sure.
I think I would crap my pants if I ever saw a resume that had that on there. It's just kind of like, a joke type of thing. But
It's
I guess
funny though, because that's how a lot of people do this, right? When I got my
Mhm.
colleague that I did the color commentating with at SAIT, he was so nervous, so he put 2K on, and we did like 3 games in NBA 2K, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I can do this." I'm like, "Yeah, it's no different than this," but that's how a lot of this generation kind of
Totally.
does it now, as they simulate the game.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things. Like I'm doing some Okotoks Dogs games now,
Yep.
and I've noticed that baseball games move a little bit quicker than real life baseball games go, and so I noticed that with hockey as well, where I like to play with the game speed up a little bit higher, and so when some people say, "Oh wow, it's a lot faster than I was expecting," it's like, man, I'm almost bored sometimes because it's not going as quick as
Yeah.
I'm used to. So it actually can kind of, I don't want to say overtrain you, but it can, it's silly, but it actually does help.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I remember before I got into the broadcasting program at SAIT, because I was a student there and now I teach there, which is kind of really odd. I never would have guessed that I would become the instructor when I was the kid. But when I was 12 and 13 years old, I would be buying records, and I would be sitting there playing them, and I would pretend I was the disc jockey while I was flipping the record over or putting another one on, and
Nice.
just talking between. So yeah, it's similar doing that. So to go from that 12, 13, 15, 18-year-old kid, all of a sudden there's a broadcasting program at Mount Royal. I think I'm going to take this. What was was it an easy decision, or was it just something I went, well, I don't know what the hell else to do, so I guess I'll do this?
It was a pretty easy decision. In my hometown, we have a career fair, and a bunch of different colleges and universities come. And I knew broadcasting was what I wanted to do. And Mount Royal was one of the first ones when he walked in the door with a pamphlet, like, "Hey, we have a broadcasting class." And so I did, like, I had tried to, or I had applied, I guess, for like journalism at the University of Regina and something else at the whatever's in Lethbridge. I think it's a university there. But Mount Royal, for whatever reason, that was the one that just kind of stuck with me. I really liked Calgary as a city, and really liked the kind of presentation that they had. So yeah, it ended up being a bit of a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to hold anything against you. You didn't go to SAIT, so.
They must have been second in the door, or else otherwise, it would have been different.
Exactly. You know what? I've always believed that a broadcasting program, and I know instructors at almost every broadcasting program across this country. They're all good programs, and it has to fit well with the person that's taking it. And I like to think that ours is the best in the country, but I'm sure that every single instructor says the same thing about what they've got as well.
Right.
And I also believe that if like Kyle Bukowskis came through our program, Kyle could have gone to any damn school across this country, and he still would be doing what he's doing. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think it's more the individual and how much they put into it, and what they take out of whatever the curriculum is, and what they take out of whatever the instructors do tell them, and move their career into where they want it to be and where they need it to be. So, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, everyone goes into these, everyone goes into their program, wherever it be, Ryerson, SAIT, Mount Royal, and they kind of think they have this expectation of what broadcasting is going to be. And then pretty early on, first few weeks or months, they're kind of hit by like, oh, wow, I didn't expect this. When was that kind of moment for you, if you had it?
I don't know if I really had it, to be honest. There was a lot of different times where it was like, yeah, no, this is like the running the board and stuff like that wasn't necessarily what I was expecting. I guess the kind of, oh, I wasn't expecting this, was when we would learn like how to like wrap cables and stuff like that, like the kind of behind the scenes stuff, because it had never occurred to me to be a behind the scenes person before. So when all of those things were being taught, I kind of foolishly was like, why would I even bother learning any of this? I'm not going to do any of this. And then the skills that were taught for that led to some of the people who were in my class have been like working at Flames games for the last 10 years because they figured out how to wrap cables, and they started from there and worked their way up, and now they're like shooting Flames games and stuff like that. And so there wasn't really I wasn't expecting this sort of a thing, but it was just kind of I wish I paid closer attention to some of the other stuff instead of I'm going to do this, so this is the thing I'm going to focus on, and everything else be damned.
Yeah, the grunt work is important, and I call it that, but it's damn important because if it's not done, the broadcast doesn't happen. And when I was hiring at CJ, one of my famous lines that I tell my class is one of the first things I would get people to do is hang a banner. We'd go out to Sunshine Village and take a busload of people out there, and for the people who were brand new to the station, it's like, okay, I need you to go hang those banners up on the ski lodge. And it's, if they're crooked and all wrinkly and it's like there's no pride, it's like, okay, well, I can't give you anything important to do because you can do the easy stuff. And if you don't have enough desire to do something easy well, because it's like, well, I'm hanging a banner. It's like, okay, fine, I'm not going to give you anything important to do. And it's the same thing like you're talking about, wrapping cables or anything like that. It's important to know when you're behind the scenes whether things are done correctly or not, and have somebody you can rely on, that you can get them to do something important if needed, because they've got your back, type of thing.
Yeah, totally. And it just kind of shows the work ethic and the pride that you're going to put into something. And to your point, like if it's all wrinkly, then it's like, well, how do I know that what you actually want to do, you're going to put anything more into? So yeah, no, that's an excellent point.
Yeah. So coming out of school, where'd things go from you? Where did the career go after we graduated?
Funnily enough, I have yet to graduate, actually. I got an internship with TSN, to kind of take the place of my last semester, but I found out about the internship quite late. I went January 12th, and I think I found out like December 15th that I was going. And so I had already kind of set out my class schedule. And so I still had 2 electives that I had to finish to finish my degree, and figured, okay, I'll go do this thing at TSN for 6 months and I'll come back and finish it off, and that'll be that. And then 6 months at TSN turned into 2 years at TSN. And from there, I was in the industry, and with all due respect, I didn't feel like introduction to coaching or anything like that was something that I needed to finish things off. So I got the internship to be a story editor at TSN, and spent 2 years there, going from intern to part-time to full-time, putting highlight packs together and working on different shows for TSN in Toronto.
Nice. Yeah, where's hometown for you? Like you said,
it's Assiniboia, Saskatchewan.
Okay, cool. So going from Assiniboine, Saskatchewan directly to Toronto is a hell of a jump, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was a bit of an adjustment. Yeah, my hometown has 2,500 people in it, and I think the apartment building I lived in Toronto had more than that. So yeah, it was it was a bit of an adjustment for sure. For sure.
So the move from Toronto then to come back to Calgary to work at Sportsnet, how did that occur for you?
Well, I was starting to work my way up at Toronto, and I had found a pretty good sweet spot early on, because I'm like, while I enjoy hockey, it's not my favorite sport. I really like basketball, I really like baseball, I really like fighting, and I had got to a point where I was getting to do all that stuff, and it was really, really fun. And then I progressed to doing all the hockey stuff all the time, and I was starting to progress to doing things like Top 10 and producing different shows and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't want to be a producer, and I'm starting to progress to a spot where I like it. It's neat and the money is great, but I'm not enjoying this, and I still want to be on air. And I'd asked a couple of times if I could just shadow a couple on air people, and they said no. These guys are very, very busy, so kindly don't do that ever. And so I decided to just leave. And I have very supportive parents, too supportive at times, who let me kind of crash at their place for 3 months while I figured everything out. And during my time at Mount Royal, I was still working, or I was working at Sportsnet 960 as well. It was Sportsnet Radio, the Fan 960 then. God, I'm old when a whole bunch of different things are different names now.
Yeah.
But at least TSN's still TSN. But I had a job there and I left on pretty good terms, I thought. So I always kind of knew I had that. I don't want to say in my back pocket, but I at least had that I could try to fall back on. So I tried it a few different places. Nothing really came up. And so I messaged Kelly Kirsch and said, hey, would you like me back? And he said, yeah. And so I moved out to Calgary.
Nice. Josh,
just being in Toronto and being a fan of baseball, just being around the Blue Jays games, which I've always told Richard, and he doesn't believe me, but I think a baseball game is the best live experience for sports you can have. And especially some of those Jays games in Rogers are just fantastic. That must have just been great just to be able to go to a Jays game whenever you really wanted to.
And here's my argument. Any sport that you have to tell the people to get up and stretch when it's 2/3 through is not, no, forget it. Anyway, go ahead in your little dream world, Josh.
I loved it. Yeah. I don't know if I would say it's the best live experience that I was at sports wise, but it was really cool. And I went to about 80 Jays games while I was there. Just any day off I had, I was going to a Blue Jays game. They were very affordable at the time.
Yep.
And it wasn't the hardest ticket to get either. I remember I went to opening day when I lived there. They were playing the Tigers and the place was packed. Everyone was thrilled. It was awesome. And then I was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm going to the next, like I bought tickets that night to go to the next game. I was like, man, can't believe I got those. There was 5,000 people in that place for the second game. So me and 5,000 of my closest friends watched Rob Barajas hit a walk-off home run to win the second game of the season for the Blue Jays. So that was a bit of a different experience than opening night. But yeah, no, I loved it. And I just like being a sports fan. I know Toronto gets a bad rap out here because, it's the center of the universe, but there's just anything you want to watch, it is out there. If you want to go check out rugby, there's a rugby team. If you wanted basketball, there's basketball. If you want hockey, there's almost too much of it out there. At the time, mixed martial arts was not legal in Ontario, but there was boxing going on, and MMA was at least legal in Quebec, so I could pop over there on a GO train and watch that. So anything I wanted was out there. It was really cool.
It's and you mentioned the mixed martial arts, and that was going to be my next question for you, as you know, being passionate about the MMA side and covering it now. When you were out there, that was kind of the boom, but it's weird that it was the boom and GSPs going and UFC's really getting these great pay-per-view buy rates and stuff, but it didn't seem like the TSNs, ESPNs were really covering it as passionately as they would now.
Right. Yeah, no. At the time, I think Sportsnet had the rights to the UFC, and I had kind of worked out a spot where I could work on UFC highlights and stuff like that. Like I was kind of it was that and curling, which is a weird niche to work out for yourself. Yeah. But I was kind of the guy that they went to for those particular things. And it was strange. And I had talked to different people about like, hey, these are big events that are happening. And some would say, no, we're pretty happy not covering that stuff, actually. Yeah. And now they're in charge of putting it out there to a national audience. So it's funny how money can change things a little bit. But yeah, it was interesting. And actually, like 2 days after I gave my 2 weeks notice, they said, hey, we're going to Montreal to cover this GSP fight. Do you want to come? I was like, I would love to, but I'm moving back to Saskatchewan almost that day. So that would have been my first time going live to something. But yeah, no, it was a weird time. Like I still somewhere have a legalized MMA shirt, which is a strange thing to think about, how far this sport needed to come a decade ago and how far it has come in that amount of time. But yeah, it was a bit of a different experience covering kind of the redheaded stepchild at the time.
I remember, just one last thing. I just remember listening to The Law, like live audio wrestling at that point, and them talking about like it not being legal in Ontario. And I couldn't believe it. And I mean, even the fight that we had with MSG and trying to get it legal there, it's so crazy how full circle it would be with how popular it was at the time. You would assume like everybody wants this. And then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Rogers Center, Skydome, whatever you want to call it, is selling out for a GSP fight.
Right. Yeah. And that was the thing I never understood. It's like, regardless of what you think of this thing, like everywhere, I don't want to do the peer pressure thing like everyone else is doing it, but everywhere else was doing it and making mucho dinero off of this thing. So why what is the issue? I remember one of the holdups was the wording in the legalization of boxing was everything has to be contested in a 4-sided ring with X amount of ropes. And it's like, well, the UFC's in an octagon, so I guess we're screwed. It's like, really? Yeah. That's what we're holding this up on? Like, it was a very weird debate.
It was.
Coming from a guy who really doesn't have much of an interest in that sport, and which is kind of funny because I don't mind boxing at all.
Right.
I guess I saw some really on TV, some really good boxing matches, Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield to stuff, kind of stuff like that. But I never have ever gotten into MMA. And I think the biggest thing for me is when the guy's on the ground, the guy just sitting there pummeling them. Mm-hmm. It for me, it just makes me uncomfortable. Like it's fair. Like, okay, uncle, like, okay, the guy's on the freaking ground, like enough already. And I think that's why I kind of like boxing, because there's a guy there going, okay, stop, right, type of thing, and move aside and let him kind of,
my friend,
as the cat goes by.
Yeah,
we needed the obligatory cat in these.
Right.
So,
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? At least there's a referee to give the guy a chance to kind of catch his breath or whatever, and give him 10 seconds to say, do you want to keep going and get your head smacked in or not, type of thing. Mm-hmm. So how do you address that for people who, like I said, it's not like I have a disdain for the sport. I'm not going to protest against it or any of that. But for me, it's just like, I'm uncomfortable watching that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think when you're covering a sport like that, you do have to understand, like, there are just going to be people who don't like it. Like it is certainly not a sport for everyone. And we are past the point now, like in the kind of second stage of the UFC, when they got the Ultimate Fighter. Now they're on Spike TV. Now they're a little bit more in the mainstream. They're getting millions of pay-per-view buys and things like that. There are at least people discovering the sport and realizing, oh, okay, this is what it is, and making decisions off of that. Those decisions have been made. I don't know if there's anyone who, oh, what is this? Like people know what the UFC and people know what MMA is at this point. I would say for people who are uncomfortable with that, the thing that I actually appreciate about MMA a little bit more than boxing in that sense is, when a guy is on the ground, that's not the end of it. Like, while it can look, there are times where they are out and they are getting beat on, and there are certainly times where the referee does not come in time, and there are a couple of extra shots that are completely unnecessary, and I do not like that part of the sport at all. What I like is that once a fight is done, it's just done. Instead of, well, this guy got up for the 8 and he can walk to the ref for 10, so I guess we're going to go, because, like, having experience with concussions, those don't get cured in 8 seconds. And so you get guys who can still kind of like figure out what to do while the lights are kind of flickering, and then they take more brain damage, and then it just gets worse. And so for me, an MMA fight, when a fight is done, it's generally done. A boxing fight can go an extra 1 or 2 minutes while a guy is still kind of loopy, and that can be extremely dangerous as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Absolutely. Yep.
I think the athleticism has changed too, and just all the ways you can. There's all the different techniques that you have now. You look at it back in '95, and that's far more barbaric and change. And I think you're seeing that in wrestling. As I see that you got the Los Ensembles shirt on, I believe, and you're seeing it from a guy like Naoto or other performers in that realm. The tide has kind of changed with those combat sports now in those two realms, where there's just a lot more athleticism and a lot more blending of styles that you're getting to see from some of those combat sports and professions.
Well, and it's also like one of the main reasons why jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu kind of takes off is that it is a relatively low impact way of learning self-defense. And you can see it in maybe a bit more of a primal form than you would be dealing with on the streets somewhere if you ever have that happen. But if you get knocked down and someone is standing on top of you punching you, there is a way to get out of that. If you know what you are doing, how to grab the arm, where to put your legs, all of a sudden you're putting a dude's leg on backwards, and look at that. Now I've got out of this. So there is at least a little bit of a real world element to that as well, which is kind of the basis for what some of these things were taught at least 20 years ago. Now it's, do you want to be an MMA bro? But for a long time, a lot of these things were taught as self-defense as well.
So I guess we're going to bring it back to the broadcast side now. Mm-hmm. You come back to Calgary, and then you go to 660 before you really go to Sportsnet, though, right? Do more stuff at 660 first?
Yeah,
work.
that was interesting.
Yeah.
Because I had the contact with Kelly Kirsch, and I messaged him, and he brought me in for an interview, and he said, we'll probably get you doing some stuff at 662. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like I did a bunch of news type of things at Mount Royal. Like I said before, I didn't want to do any of the cable wrapping and stuff like that, but I apparently didn't view myself as above the news thing. So I was part of our election night coverage one night, and I actually kind of enjoyed that. And so I was like, yeah, I can do a couple of newsy things here and there. And then the news director at the time, Audrey Whalen, called me and said, so Kelly tells me that you're going to be working with us. I said, yeah, no, I'll help out where I can. She said, no. Like, you are working for us and you will be helping out over there. And it was I misunderstood how this all came to be. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that I was doing early on was at 660, and just any kind of scraps that 960 was able to toss my way, I would kind of nibble up as best as I could. But yeah, I ended up doing a lot more at 660 than I anticipated doing.
Traffic reports and the sports, 20 after or quarter after, I guess, and quarter two type things.
Yeah, sports at 15:45 past the hour or anytime at 660news.com. But yeah, it was traffic, audio editing. They had me write up. They found out relatively quickly that I was like a little bit witty, at least. I like to think I am anyway. And for news, I really am. And so they would have me do some of the offbeat stories. Like I wrote a story on poo-pourri one time and was able to throw a bunch of weird things into that. Like just those types of, hey, we just had 5 stories about people getting murdered. Here's a story that's going to lighten things up before we go to commercial break, so you don't want to drive off a bridge. Yeah. So I did a bunch of those things. I actually did some anchoring, which was a little bit crazy. I never really got into the reporting thing, which thank God. But yeah, it was pretty well, which was kind of the story of my early time there. It was pretty well anything they asked me to do, I would at least try it twice.
Right. What year was that, Peter?
I started at 660 and 960 for the second time in 2011.
Okay.
So yeah, it was, I had actually 4 days after my 10-year anniversary with Rogers was when my time with Rogers came to a close.
Wow. Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. So the transition to move over from 660 and starting to do 960 stuff to the point where you and G Rana, State grad, I'd like to poke that in there once in a while.
You worked with a few State grads. You worked with Haley Germain as well.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, there's tons out there. You guys did a wrestling show for a while there as well. And then the 9 with Klein that they had as well. So, moving from 660, moving over to the Sportsnet side of things, how did that work? And, how was that for you?
It was long. But it was, you just kind of have to accept that like any free time kind of goes away, which was frustrating at times. But yeah, I was still, I was never officially full-time at 660. So I was able to do both. Almost had another cat drive by. But yeah, I was always pitching things to Kelly, and I was always, okay, well, I'll work here, and then on the weekend I'll do board hopping at 960. And there were some times where the schedules would conflict, and I would do overnight. Like I would hear myself doing the recorded overnight sports that I did from the evening shift while I was driving in for a morning shift at 960. And that led finally myself and Will Nault, Mount Royal grad, we talked them into doing a baseball show, MLB Central, with a long, illustrious 1 year. And then we talked them into doing a fantasy football show, and that turned into a Saturday show. And then it was how Kelly liked to call it, a kung fu show with myself and Girana. But all of this time, I was still doing everything at 660. And I would not recommend this, and I certainly wouldn't recommend announcing it while you're still working there, but I'm not, so who cares? I don't think they'll fire me a second time. A lot of the prep work that I did on those shows was while I was doing like sports and traffic at 660, because I was able to get pretty good at just kind of like, okay, these are the things that are going on. I don't need a lot of prep time for these things. Like I can run through a scoreboard and not make it sound like I'm just saying, Toronto 7, Atlanta 2, New York 5, Boston 4. Like I know how to ad lib, and I know how to bring some personality to those. So I relied on that a bit too much. And during those times, I was also getting fantasy football rankings going, or, okay, I have 9 minutes between traffic updates. I'm going to watch this 7-minute fight and then have 2 minutes to kind of get my bearings set. So it was a lot of trying to make hay while the sun shines, sort of a thing. But yeah, it was a lot, and it was a long process. And I guess coincidentally, at the time where things were starting to open up at 960 a little bit more, because Rob Kerr goes to the Calgary Hitmen, and that opened a bunch of things up. And I was a little bit, I didn't think I would get an afternoon show spot, because I kind of felt like Will was situated perfectly to move into that role, because he'd been producing for forever. But I thought maybe I fall in as a producer or something like that. And I finally get something full time at 960. And at that point, Sue DL moves from 660 over to whatever they're calling QR77 this week. And something opened up at our place in the traffic department. And so I had gone about a decade without having anything full-time pop up. And now I have 2 places that want me full-time. And I didn't really know which direction to go, because the 961 was a, hey, you might have something. And 660 was, you will definitely have something. So please make a decision on this. And then the day that I was supposed to, like, I had kind of an ultimatum, like, by this day, if 960 hasn't told you something, we want you and we want your decision. So make that decision. And on that day, the person who gave me that ultimatum was fired. So that gave me a little bit of extra time to figure things out at 960. Yeah. And Scott Metcalf came in from Toronto, and I kind of explained, because I was ready to say, like, I'm not coming to 660. Like, I'm not going to sign on full time. I'm going to wait for this 960 thing to pop up. And I was ready for a bit of a blowback, and Scott Metcalf, to his credit, said, well, yeah, of course you will. That would be ridiculous. Like, you don't want to be a morning traffic person. You want to be a sports person. So by all means, wait out this opportunity. And then Pinder goes to the afternoon show, and I kind of always felt I was a better fit for the mornings, because I was easy to make fun of, and they're very good at making fun of people. So after a long time of just trying to, okay, well, I'll do this baseball show, and yeah, I'll go cover a Cavalry FC press conference and doing all of these things, all of a sudden things broke down, and there I was sitting on the morning show. So it was one of those, like, overnight successes in 8 years sort of a thing.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this podcast that are going to want to get into broadcasting, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
especially on the sports side.
Yeah, a bingo. And not just that, Peter. It's not just I want to get into sports.
Mm-hmm.
I want hockey.
Right.
To hell with this, to hell with that. And if I can't have hockey, well, I'm going to have hockey. Like, there's no plan B. There's no, like you said, learning how to wrap cables and stuff like that, where you go, geez, maybe I should have paid attention with that. But at least you were, adept enough at doing news, traffic, filling in on doing some other things, at the point where it wasn't, you were, obscure or obsolete. But more and more we see a lot of students who come in who are like, it's hockey or die.
Right.
And I don't think that they realize how many of them we have come in every year that are like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, Chris Cuthbert isn't going anywhere, right? Kyle Bukauskas has a 30-year career ahead of him still.
Right.
Like, where do you think you're going to go? These people aren't just going to go, oh, wait a minute, John Doe, you're here. We've been waiting for you, and it's like an automatic, I'm coming right out of state and I'm going to go to TSN, not to do the jobs you did, but to actually replace the people that are, making 6 figures.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go be Gino Retta. Gino Retta doesn't know he needs to retire yet, but I'm going to go tell him he does.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And it's really hard as an instructor to try and grab him by the shoulders and go,
they have that tunnel vision, right? You talked about everything that Peter did. I mean, give you credit. Like, you won me some fantasy football weeks, because at times I was listening to Matthew Barry for a bit, and I was like, I listened to you guys and no BS. I'm like, I like these guys more than Matthew Berry. Like they're actually being more like forward thinking than what Matthew Berry is with just like bullshit kind of thinking going forward. Like they're having better thoughts about how to go with the fantasy football side of things. And I remember when I heard the wrestling show the first time, like this can't be real. What's going on? This is amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you wrapped it up with a really good sentence. This was an 8-year overnight success story.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's the problem that a lot of students have is it's like they graduate, they don't get a call from Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver, or, you know, big market city.
Right.
And it's like, they're not willing to go to Olds, or they're not willing to go to, you know, Grand Prairie and start things off there. They're not willing to go cover and I apologize for anybody in Prince George, but the Prince George Georgians or whoever their hockey team is.
Right.
Right. The Kings?
I don't know.
Cougars.
Cougars.
There we go. Okay. But I mean, even below the Cougars, maybe there's a
right.
BC JHL team down there. And, you know, we've had Cammie Kepke onto the broadcast. That's where she went.
Mm-hmm.
She went there to go cover that. And again, for her, it's maybe the same kind of timeline, an 8-year overnight success story where it's going to cover the Prince George Cougars or whoever they've got there, then going over to Moncton, then going to Saskatchewan, then finally coming to Calgary, and then, you know, things moving around at Global where she's now doing the sports. But
mm-hmm.
but they just don't have this patience, I guess. Maybe
right.
I'm not sure what it is. So what advice do you have for these kids that are like, I'm the next superstar and they just don't know it yet?
Yeah, it's funny because like the way my career played out, at least initially, is how a lot of people view theirs. Like, oh, I don't need to do the small town thing, and I never have. Like, I went Calgary, Toronto, Calgary. I was extremely lucky in that sense. I suppose I have now gone Calgary, Toronto, Calgary, Okotoks. So I guess I'm working backwards. But I don't mean that as a shot to Okotoks. I'm having the time of my life doing Dogs games. But yeah, my advice, because I've had some time to think about this sort of a question. At no point are you above doing anything in this industry, and like you are never too good for something. And I think that was one of the things that I kind of fell into was about midway through my stretch when I was starting to do some shows and they were actually sounding pretty good. And I was doing sportscasts and I was not to toot my own horn too much, but I was better than everyone. Like, and it was just, well, I'm better than everyone. So why don't people recognize this? And then I would see people getting hired for other jobs. And it's, well, why didn't they ask me? How could you not ask me? Do you not know how good I am? And the answer to that is no. They don't know how good you are. There's 1,000 people out there who are doing exactly what you are doing. And if they aren't doing it as good as you, they at least took the time to reach out and network and doing those sorts of things. And that was kind of a bit of a light bulb moment for me, was that like, as good as I think I am, these things aren't just going to fall in my lap. I still have to work for them. So yes, no, it is one thing to be super knowledgeable at hockey, but we live in a country where everyone is. I always think of the example, we were talking about, I think Johnny Gaudreau, and talking about like how much like, hey, he's on fire right now. This is great. And someone texted in, yeah, I went to the Flames game last night and just watched Johnny Gaudreau exclusively in the defensive zone all night. And I can tell you, he wasn't doing a good job. It's like, I get paid to do this stuff and I'm not going to do that. Like, that sounds like the worst way to spend a night you spent $90 to go watch Johnny Gaudreau play defense. What the hell is wrong with you? But you have a fan base and you have a country that basically treats watching hockey like they're going to be hired by the Leafs in the scouting department. So congratulations, you know a lot about hockey. So does literally everybody. The advantage that we have as sportscasters is it's our job to watch this stuff. So we're going to watch it a little bit more. And I am able to present it in a relatively entertaining fashion to some. And so you have to find something else to at least kind of get you in the door, while still it's tricky because you have to pay attention to this thing that is going to make you stand out while also still focusing on that hockey thing. So it is quite a bit of work to do that. But yeah, no, like my just kind of summary of it is, yeah, you are not above any job and any sport and any coverage of something. And you never know what is going to be kind of the breakout thing, whether it is a UFC show that someone catches onto, or a fantasy football show that someone listens to, where I didn't get paid for 2 years and then we did, and then the show got too expensive and got canceled. Like you never know what the breakthrough is going to be. But I always kind of took pride when we would be doing shows and something came up in basketball or something came up in baseball, and my colleagues would go, well, Peter, this is more your expertise than ours. Can you kind of fill us in? And that was, now, hell of a lot of good it did me. But it was always, I always took kind of pride in that. And it can be stressful because just me personally, like I said before, like I just want to be better than everyone. And so I would hold myself, like the fantasy football thing, I wanted to be better than Matthew Berry and Christopher Harris and the guys at Fantasy Footballers. And in basketball, I want to know more than the guys who were the starters at the time and now no dunks and those guys. And in hockey, I want to know more than Steinberg, and I want to know more than Nault, and I want to know more than Chris Johnston. In baseball, I want to know more than people who just have to focus on this one thing, and it can drive you crazy. So there is a balance that you do have to find, but it can't just be hockey, because if all that got you into broadcasting and all that got you a job in broadcasting was hockey knowledge, we could pluck 3 guys out of the dome on any night, and odds are they know something about hockey. They might be knuckle draggers and can't express it very well, but if all you have is hockey knowledge, that's awesome. So does everyone else.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of people got to get out of their heads is when you become a sports broadcaster, you are no longer a fan.
Right.
You don't go to the game with a beer and a hot dog, maybe you do, and enjoy the game.
Mm-hmm.
You are analyzing what's happening so that
Right.
you can expound to people who haven't been to the game or who didn't get a chance to go to that game why it was a 4-3 loss.
Right.
Especially with play-by-play,
happened?
Richard. Like, I think, and Peter, I'm sure you can go with this too. Like, I always thought when, I did play-by-play and I did for the whole team, well, you have that emotion. You do have to take it back a little bit and still try to find that nice balance with everything, and then become a storyteller on that side.
Yeah, when you're in that broadcast booth, when you're in the press box, it's not like you're jumping up and down when your team scores a goal. Right? You're writing out who was on the ice, why that happened, what the play developed, who gave the puck up, whether that was a good good shot. It's a completely different aspect where it's funny. I have a lot of friends who are in the sports broadcasting thing, and it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go see the game? No, because I don't want to work. Because when I sit here and watch the football game, all I'm doing is watching why the Stampeders broke down there.
Yeah,
I'd rather go shoot some pool with you. You know what I mean? No,
exactly. And like I'm a little sick in that way, because one of the things I love about watching sports is I love learning. I love learning new things. I really do enjoy that. Like I have notebooks and notebooks full here of notes that I've taken on sports over the years. So I do enjoy that aspect of it. But the fan thing is interesting. And I don't know how many people know this or don't, but I'm not a Flames fan. I've spent exactly 0 minutes of my life being a Calgary Flames fan. And then I would get called a Flames homer, and that was hilarious to me. But I grew up a Vancouver Canucks fan, and I would talk about that early on because who cares? But once I got to the morning show and started filling in a little bit more, I never wanted to say anything like that, because immediately everyone assumes, oh, you're a Canucks fan, so you're going to have Canucks homers glasses on. And so And I never wanted to have anyone think my analysis was clouded with anything. And so if you can pick out that I'm a Canucks fan from the things that I've talked about, then congratulations. That's awesome. Good for you. But I'm not going to say, well, as a Canucks fan, I think the Canucks suck tonight. And there was like the Flames playoff run of the last little while was they beat the Canucks in that playoff series. And I went and covered every home game of that. And I couldn't sulk. I couldn't, damn, that sucks or anything like that. Like, it's just, all right, I'm going into the Flames locker room to talk to these guys.
My job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I am paid to be here. It is cool. And when I go home, I can be, crap, they lost. That sucks. But for now, like, it is my job to be professional here. And I can get a little bit giddy that I'm riding in the elevator with a scratched Alex Edler. But after that, like, you can't cheer in the press box. You certainly can't cheer for the Canucks in the press box. So that made it a little bit easier for me, I guess, to not be a fan, because I wasn't a fan. But even when the Canucks would come to town or anything like that, it never really affected anything. I like to think that I can separate fan from work pretty well.
The way that I kind of describe it for a lot of people who have those rose-colored glasses on and think that this is this is an opportunity for a fan to make really killer dough covering something that they like. It's similar to a reporter. It's like if you're a big Drew Farrell fan, okay, and she votes against something that you're not a big fan of,
Who's
it's
a
like
Drew
you still
Farrell
have to go
fan?
cover it.
I'm not
Yeah.
trying to get political, but I
Okay,
guess
okay, on the other side of things, if you don't
Sure.
like Drew Farrell, okay, type of thing, you still have to go be objective and not
Sure.
and not be an ass when you're interviewing this councilman.
Right.
I guess the rule is don't be Bill. Like everyone here's Bill Simmons, for example, right? And everyone thinks, oh, I can be Bill Simmons. I can talk about my fandom and openly talk about it. Well, Bill Simmons worked years and years and years to get to that point, and he's one example of being a super fan that built an empire with The Ringer that can do that, but not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
No, he has a unique way of putting that all together. And also he knows about other things too. Like he can do an hour on the Hawks as well. It's just a lot of it does frustratingly at times come back to the Boston Celtics. But once you've made $200 million, then by all means, just
cheer
be a
whoever
fan.
you want for, right?
Right.
And
exactly.
I think the thing that Peter talked about too is I've talked to, as I've, been on the play-by-play side of this, and young broadcasters come to me before they go to Sade or Mount Royal or Ryerson, and they always say like, well, I'm going to be a hockey broadcaster and I just want hockey. And talked about those rose-colored glasses, but they can't tell me like, oh, I don't even care about the NBA. I've had guys tell me, I don't care about the NFL. I don't care about the Olympics. I'm like, so what do you think is going to happen when, situations like you talked about, Peter, when they're like, okay, well, it's the NBA finals and we have Phoenix and Milwaukee. Can you talk to me about what happened with the Suns last night? Well, no, because I just want to cover hockey. I just wanted to watch Montreal and Tampa Bay. I don't want to watch the NBA finals at all. Yeah. And I'm not going to talk to you about what's happened in the NFL season with Aaron Rodgers because I don't really care. Yeah. You're not even going to have an opportunity to step into the door.
Well, and it's a lot like when parents say, my kid's only going to play hockey. They're going to do summer hockey. They're going to do spring hockey. They're going to do fall hockey. When they're not playing hockey, they're also going to be playing hockey. Like it is just a nonstop 24/7, 365 cycle of hockey. And then you see guys who make it to the NHL and, oh, well, this guy also played lacrosse and baseball. Though there are skills in those sports that you kind of develop other muscles that are transferable. And it's the same thing with broadcasting, whether it's a different reference or anything like that. Like one of the sports that I've enjoyed doing play-by-play for the most was lacrosse, because like it's still fast paced and you get like 23 goal calls a night. It's amazing. But I would not be as good at that if I hadn't done basketball. And like there are more similarities to those sports than even I would have picked up on until I'm doing is, oh, well, he's setting a screen and now I know what to do off of that. And then doing lacrosse helped my hockey broadcasting as well. And so when you can just kind of diversify a little bit more, you can start to pick out like, oh, this helps in this area as well. And now this helps in this spot. So there are, it's if you just focus on one thing, that's fantastic. And if you can be the best at it, then you're 1 in a million. But odds are you're just going to fizzle out in a spot that you never thought you would be in.
And it's so interesting. You talked about doing the different play-by-plays. And I ended up doing track and field for the track and field championships and getting draped to that, but asked to do it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I, like you talked about doing lacrosse and really enjoy. I was like, this is super fun to do, like as a different sport that I never really thought I'd ever call. And it really opened my mind to doing the track. And we had Matthew Trevelini, who's one of the greatest athletes I've gotten a chance to see. And I wouldn't have gotten that experience. I wanted to do it because I was like, put me out for whatever you want to do. But I do feel at times some of these younger broadcasters that are coming in are like have that one track mind and wouldn't get those experiences because like, well, I don't want to do track and field. Why would I want to do track and field?
Well, and another example, toward the end of my part-time time at 960, they had a horse racing show and for whatever reason they wanted to make a switch with the host, and they came to me, and I know nothing about horse racing. Like they run fast and then one of them wins and that's it. And that does not make a fantastic 1 hour show, is just me saying that. And then now I have 59 minutes and 30 seconds to fill. Fantastic. So I had a lot of learning to do on the sport, and I found preparing for that and learning for those shows and just making sure like this is not something I can ad lib at all. So I need to be over prepared on this. And that helped in my preparation for hockey broadcasts and baseball broadcasts and basketball broadcasts and boxing broadcasts. Is like, I had to work so hard. Oh, hey, this note-taking thing really does help. Maybe I should do this for my other things, where if I'm more comfortable, this can just add to things as well.
It's funny, you mentioned something earlier that has nothing to do with sports related until I break it down. And this is what I've done with some of our students as well. You said when you were at Mount Royal, you covered live election.
Mm-hmm.
And the similarities actually on covering a live news event and covering a live sporting event are remarkable. You still have to do all your research before. You have to have all your facts prepared, and you're covering something that's happening. So you have to be able to ad lib. Right. Now, granted, talking about the statistics and numbers is different than what's happening on the ice type of thing, but there are still some transferable skills that I wasn't shocked when you said that you enjoy doing that, because there are transferable skills that you can do that. And it's still that rush of something happening like that, rather than a news event is over and I'm covering what happened, that these people were in this car accident or something happened here. Right. Yeah. It's something that's an ongoing, and you don't know how it's going to end, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to stay on top of it for that. So, totally. Let's talk about a dark day. We've had a number of different people come onto our podcast. One of the things we haven't covered is getting fired in this industry. Getting laid off is probably the better term to use, and what happened for you. There's an old saying that goes around that you haven't been in radio until you've been fired or laid off. So I mean, you're earning your stripes now, type of thing. But it's a gut wrenching thing to happen. I hate to put you through this, but you've said that you have no problem doing this. Right. I think this is really important for people to hear what the process was, how you went through it, how you felt while you were going through it. And now you've had some time to kind of pick the pieces up and go, this isn't the end of the world at all. This is just another door opening. But at the time, it sure as hell didn't feel like that. So let's go back to the day that it happened, and relive this nightmare if you're cool with that.
Yeah. So the day it happened, I got out of the shower and there was a text waiting for me from Kelly Kirsch. It said, "You have a meeting at 9:30. You have to be able to make that. Will you be okay to make that?" It's like, yeah, not a problem. Like I'm working from home. We do the meetings from home. Like it's about 5 steps. I think I'll make it in an hour. I'll be fine. And normally because we had a few of these meetings, because at the time the Flames aren't doing so hot, and we had a chat to discuss like, hey, we can't just say the Flames are crap for 6 months. Like we have to be able to mix things up a little bit. And so I just thought we're going to have another show meeting, because the Flames had, I think, won a couple games in a row or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is going to be a, how do we adjust now to maybe the Flames are still in it? And then the meeting only had me on it. It's like, well, I haven't had just a lot of me meetings in this last little bit. And so I was like, I think this is it. Like, I think that this is my time of getting let go. And anytime I had one of these meeting requests or anything, I would tell Steinberg, like, I'm a little nervous. And he'd say, "You're ridiculous. They're not going to just let you go here. Like, this is absurd." And the reason that I had it, the kind of like, is that I had just a regular, like, hey, just come in for a chat meeting a couple of years ago. And that was when I was told that the winds of change were blowing, and I was moved off of that. That was a direct quote. I was moved off of the morning show as a host to afternoon producer, which I was not a big fan of that decision. And so since then, I never took any kind of, because there was no inkling in that email that was like, hey, this is going to be a serious chat. It's just going to be whatever. And so from then on, I kind of had my guard up. And so I had an hour to prepare, and I had all my demo stuff saved, but it was on the work computer. And so I was like, I got an hour. And I just kept emailing myself like all these different things and all these different tapes that I had done over the years. Like I just need a collection of some stuff. And by the way, a quick pro tip for anyone who is in this spot: make sure when you're doing that, you also email yourself some of the contacts, because I didn't. And there are some that I forgot that I wish I still have. But yeah, I was getting ready. The way our office is set up, my wife is right now to the left of me. And she was like, I said, this might be a serious one. Like, maybe go in the living room for a little bit. She said, "You're being ridiculous, but fine. Just so you don't freak out, I will go to the living room, just kind of like tap you on the head, like, yeah, that's
Good
fine.
little puppy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just don't pee on the carpet and everything will be fine. And then the Microsoft Teams meeting pops up, and it's two windows, and one of them is a person from HR and the other is Kelly. And I was like, okay, this is it. And I was told, because of the changing dynamics in the broadcasting industry, Rogers has had to make a change to my employment status, which is that I no longer have one. And Kelly, it was nice because I've known Kelly for not that getting fired was nice, but I've known Kelly for a long time, as we've discussed in this, since 2007. I've known him and like to think we have a pretty good relationship. And it wasn't always perfect, but we had a good back and forth that we could have. And he seemed pretty emotional about it. And so that was, I don't want to say it was nice, but it was at least like, okay, this is a difficult decision for them. So I guess in some weird way that made me feel good. Sorry, I guess someone is here. But yeah, then I just went through the whole thing with the HR person, and it was just going through, these are the next steps. This is the severance we are offering you. This is a breakdown of the severance. This is what's going to happen with your pension. This is what's going to happen with your benefits. It was at that point that I was like, this is pretty important stuff. And my mind is in 1,000 different places. And I asked, can I just take a minute? And so I walked into the living room, told my wife, like, hey, I was right for once. And just had to kind of take a deep breath and then come back in and kind of get everything settled financially. All of those things with Rogers, you have discounts on your phone plan. And so that, for whatever reason at the time, was extremely important that I figured out what was going on with that. Turns out they have a former employee discount plan for a little bit. So that's nice to know.
Nice.
But yeah, it was pretty surreal. And it was weird because, like I said, it was something I was expecting, but not expecting. Like I was expecting it to the level that I was always, well, one day I could be fired. And this was just going back, like this happened in March. And a few weeks before was when TSN radio just shut down in Vancouver and all over the place. And the Vancouver one got to me because they were doing very well. And they were, I guess, a legacy station out there. And then just one day it was, we kind of want you to be a weather network now, or a Bloomberg, I think it is now. And so that's what you're going to be. And it's like, it doesn't matter how good you're doing. It doesn't matter how much money you're making. It doesn't matter whatever. You are very expendable at this point. And that has been the thing that I guess was the most difficult to deal with. Was it was an off day for the Flames, but then they played again like 2 days later. And you go on Twitter and everything's the same. Like nothing has missed a beat while I am gone. That there isn't this giant hole in Flames coverage now because my 3 jokes a game aren't being provided into the Twitterverse now, and my expert analysis for 4 hours a day isn't being provided. There aren't people in the streets running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and you feel very replaceable. And it's like, well, what was I doing? What am I doing this all for? But I also found I woke up the next day, and there was a weight kind of lifted off. And you don't realize when you're in it how much is going into a show every day. And specifically with the Flames, like there's, as we've discussed, I enjoy a wide variety of things. But when you do get to a certain level, you are supposed to focus more on what everyone wants you to focus on, and that is the Flames. So you build up by being good at a variety of different things, but now you have to be good at the one thing. Like I was at that point that everyone wanted to get to, where now I'm just focusing on the Flames, and I didn't want to do that. Yeah. And that was not as enjoyable for me as it maybe would have been for some other people. And it was kind of okay, this is the first time, like I've been doing all this since I was 17 years old. This is my first time to really take a bit of a break, reassess, and figure out where I want to go. And I was frustrated with a few things there. Like there was no real video component to anything that we were doing. Steinberg and I did Instagram Live for a little bit in the first part of the pandemic, but once he got back into the station, that became a little bit more difficult to do for technical reasons I will never understand. But I thought like there's video stuff that we could be doing, and there's all these different platforms that are available in 2021 that we're just not taking advantage of. It's like, well, why don't I try to do that? And I am having so much fun right now. I'm not getting rich, but I am having an absolute blast doing my own thing at this point. But yeah, it was tricky and it was difficult. But I think the main issues I was having were more kind of ego driven than anything else. Like it was how are things moving so smoothly without me there anymore? So that took a little bit of wrapping your head around. And also I didn't know what I did wrong, because forever, and even in this podcast, we are discussing, like, basically one of the things my dad told me was, the more things you do, the harder it is for them to fire you. And I was like, there's nothing here I can't do. I don't know if I'm the best at everything, but like, I can produce if you need me to. I can go over to 660 and do sports updates if you need me to. I can go over there and do whatever. When I was on the morning show, I did a 1-minute stand up on breakfast television doing sports, like what happened the night before, what's coming up tonight. By the way, make it a little bit funny because this is daytime television. So please, for God's sake, be funny at 5:30 in the morning. There were things there, like there was nothing I felt like I couldn't do. And there was no sport I felt like I couldn't, if you gave me a week, I couldn't cover it very, very well. And it's just like, that doesn't matter. So that took some wrapping my head around. And that is still kind of the frustration that I have, is that there were so many things that I did, and so many things I did for free. Like I never got paid for the baseball show. Like I said, for the fantasy football show, it took me 2 years, and then we got paid for 6 months, and then it was over. And we never got paid for the fighting show. And on that sense, that show cost me money because you have to buy pay-per-views and stuff like that too. So I was frustrated because I did all of these things with the hope that, okay, I'm going to build up to this point, and then it's going to be tough for them to fire me. And according to the government of Canada, I just got laid off, but it still felt like I got fired. So that was a little bit difficult to kind of wrap my head around. Yeah.
It's funny because while you're talking on this and feeding the flames machine and all this other stuff and having to do things for free, during none of this have I noticed any I hate this industry and I'm not doing it anymore. You know,
no.
Like the love for what you did and for what you continue to do and what you will continue to do in the future is still there, right? That passion, that energy, that fire is still there, even though, somebody snuffed the flame out and a pretty decent kick in the ribs type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in a unique spot right now because we are in a time with how things are going in the world where the employment insurance benefits in this country right now, it is quite easy to just sign up for that, and that is something that I have done. And so I am still making somewhat of a semblance of what I was making before, and then I was also given a severance that basically paid me out for a year. It is essentially what it is, which on another side, my contract was up at the end of next year anyway. I don't know why they didn't just like have me sit around, and that was another thing, but that's a sidebar. But I'm in a unique spot where, like, money is not a problem at this point. Like it will be, and it'd be awesome if I won the lottery or whatever. But I literally have enough money to be okay for 2 years, so I can do whatever I want. And the first thing I thought of was, okay, well, I have to start my own show. And I have to figure out.
Let's plug your show. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I have to do my own show, Couch Potato Diary, which comes out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on all your podcasting platforms. But I also I wanted to try new stuff, and so my wife and I have a history podcast that we do, just a general history. Hey, this is something that you may have forgotten about or wasn't completely covered in high school. And so we did that. We Had No Idea, which comes out every Wednesday on all podcasting platforms. But it's just, I can now do all the stuff that I never really had time for. Like I can do a half-hour basketball show. I can do a pro wrestling thing whenever I want. If I'm bored during the day, I'm like, I'll throw on NHL 2004. I'll play on Twitch, and whoever wants to show up can show up. And so I am, my only plan right now is to have all of these things take off and I become rich and famous off of this. But it also opened the door for the Okotoks Dogs gig. I would not have been able to do this otherwise. And commentary at the heart of it is what I have always wanted to do. I never got into this to have the Peter Klein show or Couch Potato Diary Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I always wanted to do commentary. I always wanted to be the voice on those moments that you hear on the video packages and stuff like that. And so to have the opportunity now to do the dogs thing while also doing what got me to this point has been a lot of fun. So no, it has my mind conversation. I don't make millions of dollars off of the podcast and a history podcast. What do we do? And my first thought was, well, I'll just get I'm a kind of a big guy, so I'll become a bouncer and then still be able to do podcasts and stuff like that. Like it is always, I'll get these other jobs that don't take up a lot of my extra time, so I can keep doing this. Yeah, no, that passion has not gone away.
And that's great to hear. Did the sting, was the sting any less because somebody else got let go at that station at the same time, and there were other people across the country that got let go, where this was, more of a blanket type of thing rather than just a Peter Klein, you suck and we don't want you anymore type of thing that some people sometimes, when they get fired, that's what happens.
Right.
Is it easier for you?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. The problem was like a couple of people, like I consider myself quite good friends with Jason DeForest, who was also let go. And so that sucked. And then from my days at TSN, I knew James Cebulski pretty well. And he was one of the ones who got let go in Vancouver. So that sucked. And like I said before, like I was already kind of looking at, is this something I want to be doing? Like is this show as we are doing it at this station what I want to be doing at this current time? So I was already looking for it, and like I said, I had that kind of weight lifted off, but I also understood this could be a little bit harder on other people. So in a sense, I almost wish it was just me who got laid off, because I know I have a much more positive outlook on this type of a situation than someone else might be able to. So that the way it went down, I had to wait a day to send out the tweet that I did, saying like, hey, I've been laid off. Thanks for all this time. Here's a RuPaul gif, and off I go. I had to wait a day because they were laying a bunch of people off. And then once that news came out, I got a bunch of texts, and it was really awesome. I'm finding out now that a lot of people who said, I'll listen to whatever you do next, were damn liars, but that's beside the point. I was saying, because I was getting all of these texts and all of these messages about like, hey, we appreciate what you did. We're really sorry. You'll get through this. I said to my wife, I feel bad about now how not bad I feel about this. Like I was ready for a next step. And so I felt bad that it did affect other people. I almost wish it would have just been me.
So, I mean, the year prior, at the start of the pandemic, you and your wife had a really interesting situation coming back from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And
we went on our honeymoon in Japan in February. We left on the 16th and got there on the 17th. And then we left Japan on the 29th and got back on the 28th, which was really funny. But it was just when everything was getting going. And when we went there, like it hadn't even crossed our minds to not go. And my mom said, are you guys going to be like safe? Are you going to be okay? I was like, oh, I guess. Yeah. Like SARS 2.0. Yeah. It's just going to go away. It'll be fine. And we were checking the World Health Organization's stuff. And at the time, in the entire country of Japan, which has a lot of people stacked on top of each other, there was 20 cases in the entire country. So we're like, we'll be fine. Like a lot of the things we're doing now, we were doing then. You couldn't find a mask in the entire country because everyone had one. But we had a bunch of hand sanitizer. We would sanitize going in and out of places and all of this stuff. And then when we were coming back, Kim got a message from her boss being like, it's kind of getting bad. So you are going to have to be at home for 2 weeks before you come back. We're like, that's ridiculous. And my first thought was, well, I want 2 weeks off. Why do you get 2 weeks off and I don't get 2 weeks off? So come on. So I messaged my boss and said, hey, like Kim's getting this. Do I have to worry about something? And he said, you're coming back Monday, come back in on Tuesday, take a day. And it'll be fine. And then we got back and they said, yeah, take a day and whatever. And then when I got back, it was, well, maybe take 2 weeks as well. And it, like the timing of everything in a kind of sick way worked out perfectly, because our last day in Japan was when everything in Japan shut down, and like we had no plans or anything, but like all of the tourist destinations that we had been to in the 2 weeks leading up to it were now closed. And so like we got out of there kind of just in the nick of time. It was like an action movie where there's an explosion happening behind us and we're just diving away. That's kind of how it worked. But yeah, we had a 2-week quarantine. Like there were no restrictions on us other than we couldn't go into work. And I put a few other ones on, like I'm not going to go to a bunch of places because what if I do have it or whatever. And so we were in quarantine until I think like March 11th. No, yeah, till the 14th, and then the 17th the entire world in Calgary shut down. So we had a 2-week quarantine and got out of quarantine just in time to go back into a isolation, I suppose. It was a weird time for sure. But at that point, no one else was going through it, and staying at home, not going to work, hand sanitizing, all of these different things were new to everyone. So we had like a bunch of different media requests, and one guy, he couldn't come into our place. So we did a photo shoot from our balcony, and he's standing in the back alley trying to get like zoomed in pictures of us and stuff like that for whatever newspaper it was. It was a very weird time, and it's even weirder to look back on it now. And it's like everyone's been doing this for 16 months, but we did it 2 weeks sooner, so we were the weird ones.
And then broadcasting during the pandemic on the radio when after the Go Bear situation, and just nothing's happening, and
Right.
filling that time. That, I mean, there are sometimes I tuned into you guys and I was like, man, God bless them, because they are doing every single thing they can to make sure this is entertaining.
Yeah, and that is one of the things, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with the election coverage, where it's like it's not always going to be, here's an event, excuse me, and now react to it, or there's an event coming up, preview it. There are some times we kind of have to figure out, okay, how are we going to fill this? And one of the best pieces of advice I got, I was actually thinking of it before, Dave Cadeau, who at the time was in charge of all radio things, Sportsnet, when the Bill Peters situation was going on, there were a couple of times where we were like, hey, we don't really know like the right way to say this. And we were saying that on the air. He said, never do that. Never say that. You guys are reacting to things all the time. Like there is no one in broadcasting more equipped to react to this kind of stuff than you guys who are doing talk shows, reacting to things on the fly at all times. And so I kind of took that in this scenario where we could just be like, there's nothing to talk about. What are we going to talk about? But it's like, no. We have to sometimes make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? And so that is this case. Now, it was longer than we wanted to have to do that, but one thing that was a little bit interesting that came out of it was everyone else was sitting at home looking for something to do. And so it was a lot easier to get guests to come on because they just wanted, like Craig Conroy came on like once a week just because he wanted to break up the monotony of his day because he's not doing anything. And so we got a bunch of guys from 89 and we got a bunch of guys from 04. And I was able to get, once the UFC was the only thing that was opening up, I was able to get a couple of UFC fighters because no one else is doing anything right now. So that they were able to come on and talk to me. So it was an interesting experience, but it was another one of those things where this is weird and you have to figure it out, but it is going to make you better on the other side. And I really do feel like it set up a line of communication, and it set up kind of just another way of trying to tell stories that really helped us once everything opened up again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the people that rather than just sitting on the couch and not doing anything, when they were a little bit proactive with doing stuff, it set the seeds for future development for stuff later. You know, we were able to bring people into our classroom that we could only hope to have in. Elliot Friedman talked to the class. Lisa Laflemme from CTV and National News talked to the class. It's like, the opportunity to have these people actually come into SAIT and do that, not so much, but it was like, yeah, okay, how about next Thursday? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So that opportunity to take advantage of the technology we have and have them be able to, pay things forward. Yeah. I mean, and moving forward now, now that we've done this with both Elliot, Lisa, and so many other people who have had, there's no saying that we can't do it later again. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And that's honestly something that's helped me with the doing my own podcast and everything now, is that once these people said, like, we just got them in the door, but now they are contacts that we have for forever. Like, hey, like, I'm not at 960 anymore, but I'm doing my own thing. Do you mind coming on? And so it's just kind of, it allowed a lot of people, it certainly sounds like with you guys and with us as well, to cultivate a few relationships that weren't necessarily there to begin with. And it also, for like, one of the things we were doing, I know the morning show, like, they did the chip bracket and the cookie bracket and the sandwich bracket and all of those other different things that they did. With us, we went back over like old NHL drafts. And while you're going back and doing the research on these things, it also kind of dawns on you, like, hey, when we talk about draft picks and we talk about different things, like, there's a different value to this than I thought. And there's a different way of team building than I thought. And so it kind of let you take a step back from everything and just kind of reassess, like, what are my opinions on trading up in the draft? What are my opinions on hitting on these draft picks? Like, it just kind of allows you to kind of challenge your own, I guess, your own thoughts. And that was really, really interesting.
Okay, so one more question for me, Josh. I don't know if you have anything. Any chance you're going to do a fantasy football podcast coming up here soon?
There's going to be a fantasy football component to what I'm doing for sure. And I, like, with the fantasy football show, I had so much fun doing that, and I would love to have rankings, and I would love to do all of these different things. But another fun aspect of it was I made a pretty good contact in Christopher Harris, who used to work at ESPN. Now he does his own thing with Harris Football. And I actually reached out to him. I was like, hey, I just got let go. You left ESPN and did your own thing, and now you are thriving. So can you help me? And he called me for like 45 minutes, and we just talked. Wow. And nice. Like, I've never met him before. We have talked on the phone a few times, and to kind of toot my own horn, he said, yeah, like, I don't know you. I didn't need to call you, but I really enjoyed how you interviewed and how much fun chatting with you was. So I thought, hey, I will help this guy out. And now he's gonna, at least he said he's gonna be a semi-regular for my show. So yeah, fantasy football is going to be a very big component of what I am doing. But I would like to kind of keep it all under the same Couch Potato Diary umbrella, at least for now.
Yeah. How good is Najee Harris going to be?
I think he's going to be very, very good. The lack of pass catching concerns me a touch, but I think he's going to be, I think he's going to be pretty good for sure.
300 touches this year, you figure?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far. But I don't know if anyone gets to 300 touches anymore. I think if he came into the NFL a decade ago, then locked at like 320 touches. But I think now I'll hedge and say 250 at least. We'll go with that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I wanted to talk to you about wrestling and stuff, but we'll have to come to that another day. But I guess the last thing I'll come with is your profile picture, something I'm really jealous of, because Ricochet is one of my favorite performers, and I'm glad that he's starting to get used a little bit more as we're recording this. We'll see what happens if it's just farther because he's in the Money in the Bank. But how did the profile picture come with the picture with Ricochet in the IWPG lightweight, I believe, championship?
Yeah, it was a junior heavyweight tag team championship.
Junior tag. Yeah,
I went to WrestleMania in Dallas, WrestleMania 32. So I guess that's 2016. And just one of the indie shows I was at, he was doing pictures, and my buddy Mike, who we went to Dallas with, he got me onto Ricochet. He sent me a YouTube link, the top 30 moves of Ricochet, and he's doing the 630s and all of those things. And so from there, like, I fell down a Ricochet rabbit hole. And there's a match with him and Pac at Dragon Gate that, honestly, if I'm feeling like lethargic, I will watch that. And the first 5 minutes, those guys go so balls to the wall that I'm into it, and it gets me kind of fired up. And so for a long time, he was my favorite guy not on TV. And then he was at this thing and he was doing a photo op. And as much as I liked him, I didn't like a lot of his merch, but I walked up and bought a shirt anyway, just so I could like justify taking a picture with him. So I would love to say that I accosted him somewhere and recognized and whatever, but it was at his booth. He had the belt there. And so that is where the picture featuring Ricochet, the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championships, and my second chin has come to be.
Nice. All right. Well, Peter, thank you so much. You're obviously doing so much fantastic work. I've loved what you've done through the years. And everyone, make sure you check out Couch Potato Diary, your work with the dogs, and we wish you nothing but success in the future. And until next time, folks, cheers and enjoy the day, people.